It's time for Book of Experts TV, and today we're talking earned confidence. Everyone says you've got to have confidence, but how do you actually do that? How do you create more confidence? We've got a really interesting guest and an interesting discussion coming up, and we're going to dig deep into this topic, and I can't wait to share it with you.
Time for Book of Experts TV.
Topics you love.
Experts you trust.
Friction-free referrals.
Tried,
Tested,
Trusted.
This is Book of Experts, brought to you by salesman.me.
Welcome to the Book of Experts TV show. Matt Zinman, excited to have you on here. Matt of the Z-isms, and he's joining us from just outside the Philadelphia area. We were talking Flyers and Bruins before we went live here, and you even have a sports background, which I didn't know the full story about that, but we're going to be talking about your background as an entrepreneur, an athlete, also the CEO of a nonprofit. You've got a lot going on, Matt. Welcome to Book of Experts TV.
Thanks for having me, Tobin. I mean, don't we all have a lot going on for the most part?
It feels like it these days more than ever before. Yes, I've seen a lot of articles lately with people just saying, I feel different what's going on, and people trying to, we're doing more of these we're meeting people through the screen, and they talk about Zoom fatigue. Your topic today of earned confidence, this is a big one for folks because I think people are feeling shaken out there. Our world has turned upside down in the last 6 to 9 months. We're seeing things that we've never seen before. We're not sure what's around the corner. Has there ever been a better time to talk about confidence than today?
Well, I'm not going to debate that, except for the fact that it is today. And I think that you're right. There's so much going on, and this does come with a dose of positivity, and who can use that? So I'm very happy to be here and share about earned confidence.
Before we dig into, tell us a little bit about your background. So I know you're an author, you're a speaker, you're also a podcaster, and I want to bring up on the screen so folks can actually see this. The book is called Z-isms, Insights to Live By, and Insights to Live By is also the name of the podcast. But tell us a little bit about why you're doing this, because you're unique to our community at Book of Experts. You're less focused on the coaching and really just trying to get information out there to make an impact with more people through the podcast and through the book.
Right. Well, there's a lot of background, as the years stack up, in my early 50s now. My first career was in marketing communication, and then I got into what I still do with the nonprofit called the Internship Institute. And that's working with employers, as well as students and veterans in transition, but mostly to set up programs. And through all the experiences, life experiences, I am one of those people who've always wanted to write a book. And there are some concepts like earned confidence in it that I really don't hear a lot of people talking about. I felt a responsibility to write it in considering, well, what would I regret not doing last year? The book certainly was what rose to the surface, and I got into action, and I decided that maybe I only have a blog, but I kept writing, and I really do have a fully formed book. And yeah, you're right. For me, it is about reaching the masses. I don't have a coaching business. I'm still running the nonprofit. I have a nutrition business I work with my wife. So there's plenty, as you said, to stay busy with. And the podcast didn't actually come about right away. I didn't really quite publish the book earlier this year with any kind of end game, doing these kinds of interviews, leaning in. I just really enjoyed. And then the idea came up with a podcaster. Have you ever considered it? And now I'm, on episode 12 or 13 this coming week. It's actually 2 in 1. I do a guest episode and I do a solo episode every week. So that's just about as much as I can, bite off and chew.
Well, that's great. I love that format. We do a little bit of that. Mostly we're doing guest episodes through Book of Experts, but every once in a while, like you said, there's information that you just need to get out there because you know it's going to better the world of someone. And I've done a few of those solo episodes myself. I have a solo podcast outside of Book of Experts as well. Let's circle back to the Internship Institute, because I think that's a really interesting angle. It's something that we also believe strongly in at SalesMap, which of course is the sponsor of Book of Experts. We do hands-on sales training. So that topic is near and dear to our hearts. But before we go there, I really want to dig into the earned confidence. I want to hear, how do you think about this topic, and how could you help some of our folks out there that may pick this up, whether they're with us live, they watch the replay, but how could they develop more confidence in their life? Because we've been thrown some curves lately, and that will shake your confidence more than anything else.
Yeah, well said. When it comes to earned confidence, it's really not as much about confidence that we have yet to build as much as confidence that we've already earned, that we're not necessarily putting into or relying on it in its full way. And what I'm talking about is the very fact that life happens. We've all been through everything that we've been through. Any number of us are going through whatever tough times now, and we have tough times ahead. But the fact is that we're still standing. You can't really deny that fact. And so knowing that, we're survivors and we've been through everything that we have, we don't have to necessarily worry or be anxious or stress about the things that are happening now, or the things that are happening, especially in, what's not certain to happen yet in the future, because we know that we're fully capable of dealing with these events in real time.
So Matt, this feels like a chicken or the egg. Confidence as a topic feels like a, what comes first kind of question, because we hear a lot of people that will say, as you develop this body of work, you show yourself that you are capable, and maybe even surprise yourself in some ways of what you're able to accomplish, particularly when we take a long view. If you look in the short view, sometimes, we always get caught up of wanting to make something happen that maybe hasn't happened yet. But when you really look backwards in hindsight, there's a body of work there, and that's one way to build confidence. How do you do that going forward? To me, it always has felt like there's a little bit of, you got to fake it until you make it, and then you develop that body of work. So how are you helping people develop this earned confidence?
Well, again, Tobin, earned confidence is something that you're dealing with in real time. So the first question is what you're going through now, the very worst thing you've ever gone through in your life? And hopefully that's not the case. And it's likely not the case. So the reality is that you've made it through something much more difficult than whatever your current circumstances are. And so that you can make it through these things. You don't have to question that. You already have the ability to do it. And it really is a way to outsmart yourself from worry and anxiety and stress, for example. And it's also trying to break that habit, because worry can be a habit. And so what you need to do is, if you're starting to find yourself worrying about things, you really have to call them out and question, is this something happening right now, or is it not certain to happen? And so can you stop yourself from having to get caught up in something that isn't, instead, dealing with the real? The other thing is that you often, in being in that habit, kind of don't realize it until after the fact. And so when you worry about something and then it turns out not happening, you really need to do that 20/20. And again, ask yourself, one, what did I do to myself unnecessarily for something that never happened? And second, what did I do to other people? Because we tend to lean on each other and talk to people, and that's contagious. That energy spreads. And one really important point I'll just add here briefly is that we have a personal responsibility around our energy and the exchanges that we have and how we affect each other. And so when you're not really in control, not only self-inflicting yourself with the worry and the stress over things that aren't certain to happen, you also could be spreading that to other people that you lean on. And again, they're there for that when things are, to be dealing with the real. but not in these cases.
Probably that last point about the impact of others probably magnified, even though we're social distancing and maybe not seeing people in the workplace, for example, or out and about as much as we used to. We're also more involved, more engaged with our loved ones, those closest to us in our house. Like, we're spending a lot of time with people around us. So those impacts are probably magnified. What I'm hearing from you, Matt, is that confidence, really these are my words, and I want you to correct me if I'm getting it differently than you intended, but the opposite of confidence is really uncertainty, and that the habits that we have, habits of thought, habits of what we dwell upon in our thinking, is what is the key to creating more confidence and better habits that will fortify that confidence structure, and focusing less on the uncertainty and the fears and anxieties. Is that how
right?
you
Absolutely. Certainly the latter. I think it's, part of the building of the confidence is to recognize what it is you've already built and how. And so, the example that comes for me, if we talk about what are some of the worst things that have happened, and again, life adds up. We've all been through the ringer. But if I can just share, a story, it's very personal, having to do with my mom. And I was in my early 20s, and I'm the youngest of four. And we knew something was wrong with her. We didn't really know what it was. And my parents called together, a family meeting with actually a therapist to kind of have this reveal. So we were all bracing for what it was. And unfortunately, it was terminal. And what we did not expect, though, is that at that time, she had received a tainted blood transfusion and contracted HIV. And, the next 10 years of, being a caregiver and just seeing her through that, toward the end, there were any number of times that we thought we'd lose her. And, we had to go through that anguish about all that went into that. And then she'd pull through and we'd have more time with her and she'd get better. And this kept repeating. And after a while, it really just got to the point of, the anguish is bad enough as it is. Why put yourself through more than just dealing with what's happening? And, that really is at the root of it. And she's gone, be 25 years. So, as hard and as it's been and was, and for someone to hear it for the first time, what I really want to impart in a positive way is that experience with her, certainly, I would say the worst experience of my life, is something that, that has helped me be stronger and recognize that I, didn't, no longer, I know not to get caught up in things that aren't really happening.
So there is a aspect of confidence that comes from our ability to look backwards in hindsight, 2020 hindsight, of taking a measurement of what we actually have accomplished. And I think we tend to short that a little bit. Like, in general, always looking forward, what's next? What do we want to do? What are our goals? But there's a benefit to stopping for a moment, smelling the roses in the present moment, enjoying that, which I just heard you talk about. You were dealing with all these challenges as a family with your mother's health, but there were a lot of moments there that you could appreciate and you could build confidence around because you were worrying about things that hadn't come to take place yet. Past history, present moment. What is your advice? What are your Z-isms for folks that are now looking to try to take things to the next level? Because I think that is we project forward and have to wrestle with this imposter syndrome of, can I really do this? How do you help people get over that hump? How have you helped yourself get over that hump? And how does the book also make that impact, or even conversations you've had through the podcast?
Right. Well, one, it's funny to kind of hear Z-isms used as an action verb in terms of the title of the book. And I don't necessarily put it forth as my Z-isms this or that. The book has a reason why it's titled. There's a story behind it in that way. But you really did touch on the right point, Tobin, which is in being present, not only recognizing that we don't necessarily have the answers for everything that we're going through, but if you step back from it, by and large, things are probably, generally speaking, okay. In the sense that your basic needs are met. You have a roof over your head, food in the fridge. Hopefully you're healthy. Hopefully everyone around you is healthy. Everything else is really circumstantial. And so when we look to the other side of our life experience and staying present, that's really about gratitude. And I think everyone's, whether that's law of attraction or just generally speaking, recognizing that being in the moment, that's where the joy happens. That's where life enrichment is. And along the same lines, just from a personal growth standpoint, there's some buy-in here. And the question that I think is important to pose is, well, why be anything less than kind to yourself? And when people think about kindness, they think it's more toward others. But again, in this case, it's toward yourself. And in terms of personal development and growth, we have, what we're striving for around confidence, around self-esteem, self-love. Some of these things can be really difficult to get your arms around. And like, I want that for myself. I want to feel that way about myself. I'm not really quite sure how to get it. It's elusive. But when you look at it from a vantage point of kindness, and of course the answer is, why be anything less than kind to yourself? That is a this or that answer. It really is the foundational building block for all of these things, including confidence itself. So if in any given circumstance, you really pose that question, is this, a kind behavior? Am I being kind to myself or not? And if you're not, then the obvious answer of why be anything less than kind to yourself comes into play. Of course, you shouldn't be doing that. And if there's any one significant takeaway from the from the conversation, I really do believe it's that is just be kind to yourself.
I love how you brought kindness and confidence together, that our ability to generate confidence is rooted in that, not just kindness of others, that kind of is an overflow aspect of being our own best friend, nurturing ourselves in allowing that confidence to sort of grow and spill over naturally when we are kind, when we're really take care of ourselves in that place, as opposed to being hard, because it's that inner voice that, if we're always talking down to ourselves and being negative and you can't do this, and hearing that little voice inside, it's really hard to develop. I mean, that is the tearing away at the confidence brick by brick, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. And it's again comes down to that buy-in, the same with just earned confidence overall. Yeah. You've made it through everything you've made it through. You're going to make it through everything you're going through, and you'll make it through everything that is yet to come. And when you stay present and you just deal with the real, you can stay focused. It also takes you away from things like regret, that's rooted in the past, holding grudges. When you think about forgiveness and you think about that as being toward others, and of course it is, if you put yourself first and recognize by forgiving somebody and letting go of those past feelings, it's really benefiting yourself. You're no longer having those past feelings that you're harming yourself. That's not being kind to yourself. So these are ways that you wash away things that are in the past, like needing to forgive the grudges that you're holding or those regrets, or not worrying or being anxious. Stay present and, root in kindness. Just draw the line in the sand. Be kind and don't be unkind.
Matt, talk with us a little bit, share a little bit of your background, because you've competed at a very high level as an athlete with the Olympic hockey team. What you've described sounds like, I'm going to call them soft people skills, right? The kindness aspects, the inner confidence. How have you been able to level yourself up into those highest levels? Because when you're in a super competitive environment, it doesn't always feel like those soft skills are what is needed to keep you going and allow you, like, what do you do for yourself when you've got that big challenge in front of you and it feels like a make or break moment?
Sure. Well, the half step back, and I know we had the pre-conversation, and I did play in terms of Team USA. It wasn't Miracle on Ice Team USA.
Right.
I was in that system, and I'm not an Olympian, as much as I would have ever loved to have been growing up. I think that sports certainly, along with, if you have the background or structure of, let's say, being in the military, my wife's a vet, or, being in the martial arts, those kinds of things that give you that foundational structure. And if you haven't had that, certainly there are other ways to acquire those kinds of things through personal growth. That's your go-to. So, to your question, Tobin, in the moment by moment and just remaining grounded and, keeping everything in front of you that, again, is real, and recognize that you're not going to let your energy management and not let yourself be drained by the things that hold you back. Who you're dealing with has a lot to do with this too. There's a lot of these factors, but again, back to the energy of it. Are you dealing with someone who drains you, or are people around you holding you back from being your better self? Those are things that are really important to consider in this entire topic under that umbrella of earned confidence.
I really like where you've taken us on this, Matt, because we talked about kindness all the way through to energy management. And those are not often, at least for me, they've not been terms that I've heard associated with confidence, but I love the breadth of what you've described today. As we wrap up, can you tell us a little bit more about the Internship Institute, and really where did that come from? I'd love to hear your why and the mission behind it.
Right. Well, internships are something that I've always been involved in, and I had four, including the Philadelphia Phillies. I worked for Warner Brothers Studios for a number of years through college, and then my last internship led to my first job. And through all of that, I'd always run the programs. I always go back and speak to the students, and again, the years add up, and I know I'm somewhere in the 300s now of having that many interns. And I went out on my own with a marketing firm in 2002, and I created a virtual internship program, which is somewhat of a specialty, and it requires more structure to run it, which the schools weren't really providing. And I decided that I was looking for a certain pivot around 2005 and 6. And this is really what aligned with my skills and my passion and experience and what I saw to be a market need. And there really wasn't much happening in the space. Certainly there have been a lot of you would thinks. There's a lot of pivots that have been involved over the years. And I can't say that it's probably the hardest thing I could possibly have tried and continue to do, but it's worth it. There's a lot to show for it. And the main thing that we do focus on are for employers, even solo or entrepreneurs, to help them set up these programs, especially now with COVID, doing a lot of trainings around virtual internships, because the schools that had previously not been willing to award academic credit for virtual internships now have to. So, what is that structure? And I'm training the colleges at this point. But again, my focus is on setting those programs up and making sure they're valuable to the employer so that they work, for everybody else and they sustain.
Yeah, that hands-on learning experience is really coming to the front. We have college and universities that are not able to host in-person classes, or if they are, they're running into problems in this sort of pandemic environment. Google just came out with their new certification programs. Of course, they're very focused on the information technology space or computer science space, but this is a topic that's going on in multiple industries right now, which is how do we get more people in with the skill set and actually able to get their hands in not just theoretical or book knowledge that they're bringing from their education. So I love that aspect. Matt, finish up if you would. Make sure we've got the right information. I'll share the book on the screen again so folks can find that. Z-isms, Insights to Live By. How else could folks enter your world and stay in contact through you, the book, the podcast?
Sure.
Or the nonprofit, I should.
Or the nonprofit. Well, I'll work backwards. Internship Institute is internshipinstitute.org. easy enough to find, and lots of free resources there. Anybody in job transition, I guess you'll have show notes too, Tobin, but I'll mention studentsteps.org. That's a free site with resources to help people, find their way. Where everything else is concerned, and the book and the podcast, that's under mattzinman.com. And whether it's there or on Amazon, the first part of the book is free to read. And again, as you mentioned, I'm not a coach. I wrote the book, to be out for the masses. I've set an intention to personally enrich the lives of at least 100 million people by 2025, and I'm just getting started. So, thank you to anybody for being part of that. But, all I can ask is, check it out. You read the first part of the book, and you'll know if you want to keep reading by making one your own. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time to be on. Again, for Book of Experts TV, we have some information in the show notes so you can stay in touch with Matt and with our other experts at the Book of Experts community, where we've got folks in all different areas sharing what they do best, their area of expertise with others. And of course, when you are a specialist and bring your genius to market, into the impact of others, you also want to be surrounded by other experts so you can call upon the folks that will strengthen what you do for yourself or for your clients, your customers, or the people that you can make the biggest impact with. Matt, I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for joining us on Book of Experts TV.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.